Good evening, everyone. I am so happy to have Jean-Claude from Beyond Mystic back on. We've just been having a really good chat, so I remembered to press the record button. How are you, Jean-Claude?
I'm doing well, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me back on. I'm excited for the show.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Before we get really stuck in, I know that you've been having some issues with certain platforms, etc., taking your content. You're still working on that, aren't you? Just keeping all our listeners up to date. You're still very much working on a solution for that, aren't you?
Yes, I am. So let's tread carefully here too, not to get you
Yeah.
in trouble. But yeah, so some of my followers that start with the letter P have had some issues in the last week and a half, 2 weeks now, because on that platform I've been put under review, essentially from their perspective for inciting violence. And of course, if you watch any of my shows, I don't incite violence. I responded to them saying that, and please, show me where I'm inciting violence. They came back and said, well, no, you're not inciting violence, but you're promoting this quizzical content with that letter. And so I'm like, no, I don't do that either. I don't do any decodes. I don't do any posts. No, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they came back, well, it's because you talk about, the election, you talk about the health situation, you talk about this, this, and that. And these are all quizzical things, completely unfounded, sir. And so that's why you're now under review. And so I'm like, wow, that's a pretty broad brush you guys are painting with there. So, anyways, I started looking at how I could address the situation, at least on that platform. And within a day or two, they completely suspended me. And so what happened was that I was told that during this review period, I would still be able to communicate with those followers, but that has also been disconnected. And I reached out to them to say, hey, you guys told me I'm supposed to be able to communicate with my followers. And they're like, oh yeah, sorry about that, there's a technical issue, and so we'll invite you to speak to your followers on different platforms. So I'm like, okay. So very frustrating. Thank you so much, everyone, for bearing with me through all of that, because I see the notifications coming through that you guys are trying to talk to me, and of course I can't respond. There's no mechanism for me to do that there. And so it's very frustrating for me. I've been doing videos here and there on YouTube, try to keep everybody up to date. But essentially, to make a long story short, I have two backup solutions, and both of them are kind of stalled right now because there's a third party in the way of me implementing either of those fixes, if you want to call them that. So I'm waiting on somebody on one end to upgrade my account so that I can do what I need to do. And on the other hand, on the other side, I'm also waiting for a review. So once one of them will break up or I would say that break through eventually here, and then I will be able to implement the fix and carry those followers over here and give them what I promised I would give them. So bear with me, folks, but it's just been very frustrating. And of course, this is eating up all of my time. I still try to maintain all of these videos on YouTube, but at the same time, I mean, there's just not enough hours a day here to go through all of this stuff. So it's very frustrating. So thank you, Catherine, for letting me share this with your audience, because I know some of them are saying, what the hell's going on? He's not even responding to me. And that I feel really bad, folks. It's just the way it is right now.
And I will obviously afterwards be putting all Jean-Claude's contact details below, but you can see behind him beyondmystic.net. So if people sign up for your, with you on your website, then that's a really good way for you keeping people updated. And I think everyone's been through this so much. I think people are really patient. So, I'm a member on that platform. And, I think certainly everyone I've spoken to is completely sympathizes and will be very patient whilst you resolve it, because we all know at the moment a lot of it's out of your hands. So yeah, don't stress about it. Everyone will still be with you, I'm sure, when you get back up and running. So
thank you. First of all, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. I appreciate you being one of our followers there as well, and also for this message too, because this is what's stressing me out. I mean, I'm an honest guy. I say what I mean what I say, and then when I make promises, I deliver on them. And right now, somebody's in the way of me delivering that promise, and it's very frustrating to me that still, because some people don't, travel to the other platforms, they might not know yet what the problem is, and they think that I'm just ignoring them, and I don't want them to think that. That said, I did receive a lot of emails a lot of Twitter messages as well of people saying, "Hey, don't worry, JC, we got your back. We'll follow you everywhere we go. Just take your time and implement the fix." So I do appreciate you guys saying that. It's what's keeping me going, because right now I'm just stressed, and of course, there's a lot of reasons to be stressed right now. The crazy energies from space were hitting us last week. Janine and I did an episode on this. We talked about how absolutely crazy things are, and apparently things are about to get even crazier here, maybe in the next 2 or 3 days. I don't know if you want to talk about that. Catherine, you're the interviewer here. Let me know where
Yeah,
you want
I
to go with this
really
show.
do. I think it's really important. I was sharing with Jean-Claude just before we started recording about how I'd been really off this weekend. I had a headache, I couldn't shift. I just felt, as I would say, discombobulated. Just really out. Now, there was sort of other family reasons why I was just trying to get my daughter safely over to the States and things like that. But there's something definitely going on. It feels like we're in a pressure cooker that's just about to burst, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I have to share with you as well. Myself also personally, this weekend, I kind of lost my top there or blew a gasket, whatever the expression is in English. And it started last week. I could feel the jitteriness. And I was doing a show with Jenny, I think it was on Wednesday night, and I was showing the Schumann resonance graph that was off the scale. And Jenny told me that she and Ashley were taking turns, and I'm like, I didn't understand the expression. Maybe it was lost in translation. What do you mean? She says, we're taking turns losing our shit. I'm like, okay, I get it. So
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's being affected by this in different ways. But for me, there was a delayed effect. It was more this weekend, kind of like you. This is where it hit me. It could be a combination of all of these things, and the stress with all the censorship, let's call it that. So yeah, it's been pretty tough. It's been pretty tough. And I hear like this week could be even worse. Now, if you follow well, let's just backtrack here a little bit. Even before the Schumann resonance, the week before, both Janine and I were getting a lot of subscribers tell us through our different platforms, which were working at the time, that they were having these weird fighting dreams.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden they were having these dreams. It was arduous. They were fighting. They didn't know what was going on. And so we pulled a few cards on that in the episode. I believe it was the Janine Uncensored episode 12 or 13. At any rate, we talked about this movie, The Tomorrow War, which is just now out on Amazon, and how that links to maybe why everybody's having these fighting dreams right now. We are in this spiritual war, and we are, in fact, maybe in the 11th hour, last minute of this war here, and it's all hands on deck. And so, guys, maybe go check that episode if you haven't seen it. Absolutely fascinating. But it was funny to me that this was leading up, the energies were building up at the same time. And now, leading into next week, Cliff High is an individual who has this emotional reduction engine. What he basically does is scrape all of the internet for everyone's comments, and he aggregates all of those into a model that he's created. It's like a software model, and he can make predictions out of that, because our language as humans changes as we are about to be hit by bigger emotional values, meaning that we are all psychic and we're leaking the psychic information in our choice of words. And so anyways, he's been at it for 20, 30 years with this platform, has done really, really amazing predictions. And what he's seeing now for next week, sometime between July 23rd and July 28th, is one of those big, big, big emotional spike values. He's got a specific graph on his YouTube video. If you want to go check that out, you can find him on BitChute now, because he's no longer, of course, on other platforms. And that's Cliff_High. And that last video was entitled Tippy Woo. So basically saying we're at a tipping point here, and it's either going to go one way or another. The data that he's getting is this huge emotional spike, but we don't know if the outcome is good or bad. It just doesn't work like that. It's just saying that everybody's going to be freaked out within these days, and there's a specific graphic. And when he looked at that graphic, he looked a lot like the graphic that he had predicted, let's say, at the end of August in 2001 for the event that was just about to happen. So you guys know what we're talking about. So it was a similar graphic. And so now we're wondering, what does that mean for now in the next couple of days? What are we going to be looking at? Is it real? Is it contrived? What's the reason before it? Are they trying to hide something else so that we all look over here as opposed to seeing what's happening over there, maybe in Arizona? It's a beautiful place in Arizona. There's beautiful sunshine there, apparently. So Yeah, so there's a lot of weird things happening here in the next couple of weeks, and I encourage the audience to maybe get grounded, drink a lot of water, take some salt baths, whatever it is you need to do, go in nature, hug a tree. There's a lot coming our way. We're not done. And that was, by the way, the consensus also in that episode with Janine, where we were looking at these fighting dreams. We did an update to that a few days after, and she was like, oh, we're at 70-80%. We're not done. So this last 20-30% could be here in the next 10 days or so. So quite fascinating.
I've got my sage out now. Look, every time I'm on with Janine, I'm like, look, get my sage out quick. But in seriousness, I mean, one, forearmed is forewarned. So as you're saying, preparing ourselves for that, and also to putting messages out to the universe to say, let's make it the good shock, and
Right.
if the collective consciousness can somehow send it in that direction, because we know that we've been in this yo-yo situation for a long while now, and a lot longer than we've all been aware of. The consciousness is so great now for so many of us, but we know that we do have the ability to shift these things, don't we?
Absolutely. And I like that you said that too. I'm not saying this to create fear. As you said, forewarned, you're prepared, and you have the ability, if you see what's coming, and even before what's coming, to put your vote into the ether and to say, hey, I want the best possible outcome for humanity, or I want the softest landing possible, depending on how far these guys are willing to go here with this particular event that might be happening here. So I really appreciate that too. But on a personal level too, it's to understand that you're an eternal soul. You're just temporarily living in this meat suit here, and you're just witnessing these events. But this is minuscule compared to your entire life. So when you look at it from that perspective too, it at least helps to remove some of the anxiety, the stress. You understand that you're watching a play, you're part of this play, but it's just very small compared to the totality of who you are. And also, you chose to be here at this time. So that puts you in a different concept too. Like, oh, okay, this is maybe I bought a ticket to a very scary movie, but it's just that, a scary movie. So you don't have to live that energy throughout your body, I think is what Catherine is saying. So I really appreciate that.
And I never watch horror movies. I've never been able to watch horror movie, never would. So personally, I don't think I'd have chosen to be here at this time if I was about to be witnessing a horror movie. And I'm holding on to that because I'm not going to start watching them now. I know it's been a bit of a horror movie now, but there's also been a lot of positives. I mean, one of the things you touched on there, which when you were talking about Cliff High and his work, and these people, there's some amazing geniuses out there. And I haven't heard of him. I'm excited to look him up. But when we spoke last time, Jean-Claude, we spoke about some of your psychic abilities, and you had an amazing story about you videoing a wedding. And if anyone hasn't seen that story, please go back on the YouTube channel and watch it, because it really hit me, that one, quite hard in a very positive way, in terms of how we're living in these parallel realities. And we have all got these psychic abilities, haven't we? I mean, can you share a bit more about where you're at with your psychic abilities now?
Sure. Maybe for the audience who haven't seen the first episode, essentially I was hearing voices. I was being guided to go film a stranger's wedding at the time, and I didn't know this person. It was all organized by somebody else, and I didn't know why. This was almost 10 years ago now, and I was struggling to say the least with those voices. And I eventually capitulated and said, okay, fine, I'll go film this wedding. And eventually it all had to do with the groom who was about to die. And so I was getting messages to prepare this videotape so that the bride could eventually grieve this tragic death, basically. And so I was part of that unwittingly and unwittingly in a way, because I was like, I don't know these people, like what's going on? And so it was a big learning curve for me to understand that when you have these strong intuition, these strong guides basically screaming at you, at this point they were screaming at me to go film this wedding, you really have to pay attention. And not only that, you have to act and you have to hope and pray and put your energy towards making sure that you're acting on behalf of the highest good of all the individuals, which is always tricky. You don't know when you're getting all of this information bombarded at you from different levels. And so it takes time to kind of adjust. I guess, to all of these messages and to understand your place, your role in all of this. But at the end of the day, what's fascinating by taking actions and following the guidance of universe as opposed to your own ego and your own um, lacune in French, shortcomings, maybe in the way you view the worlds. When you follow universe, usually magic happens. And in the case of that story that we said, absolutely magic happened there. And I understood how absolutely important it was and how absolutely fulfilling that was to be able to do that and be there for that person who, at that point, I was the only person who could receive that message, provide the video so that the groom could speak to the bride after his death. Basically, that's the whole story. And so it was fascinating to me because I was like, wow, how crazy is this? Right. And then people ask me, well, where are you now 10 years later? Well, I'm still struggling. That's the answer. Because every time something new like this happens, I'm like, holy, what? That's crazy. No, that can't be. And Sarah keeps telling me, well, the last time was crazy and it turned out okay too. So it's always crazy. And it's always a challenge because you're human. I guess your human programming wants to get in the way and say, well, no, that's just way too crazy, right? I'm woo. I talk about woo on my show, but this is like, it's a whole other level of woo, even for me sometimes. And so I'm still struggling with all of that. But again, just following that principle of trying to do what is the best intention for the highest good of everybody involved, it usually keeps me on the right track. And sometimes, though, you have to wait a long time for the resolution. So you get in that limbo. Was that okay? Did I do that okay? Did I not do that okay? You don't know. And sometimes it's years. So it's a work in progress. How are you with all of this? Because I know you have similar abilities as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I do quite a lot of animal communication, and everyone can communicate with animals, but I've been doing this sort of professionally with clients for quite a long while now. And every single time it gets me, because what the animals are, there's several things that get me. Is one, you could not make up what they tell you if you tried. I mean, they never come out with anything expected. You might be speaking to a horse with a bad leg and they'll tell you that the owner's pregnant or something. I mean, it's quite incredible. And the other thing that really gets me is that how aware and concerned animals are about their humans, far more about themselves. And it's so emotional. And my husband really laughs at me because every time, obviously, I keep all the consults and what comes out confidential, but I'll come off and I'll be on such a high because when you're relaying this back to the client, some of it sounds so crazy. You've got no idea how they're going to take it. And then when you realize it's completely does resonate with them and there's real meaning in it. And my husband's always saying, well, I come off and I'm like, oh my God, it was just incredible. You can't believe how amazing this animal was. And he's like, you've been saying this for 15 years. When are you going to realize that, that this is and trust it? But it's because it's such an incredible feeling because you're connecting on a level that's so different from your consciousness, from your conscious mind. And it's such an honor as well. It's such an honor, isn't it? I know when you were telling the story about the wedding, it was so special for you that you were able to provide this help that was just so important to that bride and the rest of her family at that time.
Right.
And this is what I feel, Stephen, when you're working with the animals, they're so dependent on their owners or their parents, whatever you want to call them, for their lives. And we humans are facing that now. Look at what's happened to us over the last year. We're having people making decisions about what gets put into our body, about what freedoms we've got, about when we can go out, about how we can work. And you look at that, about even the most caring animal owner, that's what we've been doing to our animals, let alone don't even get on to farm animals. And so somehow it's come full circle. And I think part of the Great Awakening is going to be a real realization of the connectedness between all living things on the planet. So when we're looking at this great event, not just for the best outcome for humanity, but for all creatures and the planet as a whole.
I agree with that. It's a huge catalyst. And to some extent, people will say, well, come on, Jean-Claude, this is horrible. This is happening. This is happening. We don't need to mention it. But at the same time, like, yeah, but it's also doing a lot of beautiful things. As you said now, like we're awakening to a bigger picture and it's making us, the humans who are awakening to that too, or forcing us to become a better versions of ourselves now too, because once you see something, as you just said, the way people treat animals, you can't unsee it, and you can't be intellectually dishonest and pretend you didn't see it when you're advocating the exact same thing against whatever government or regime, right? And so it is waking up a lot of people, and I think ultimately on the good side. And just going back to the Cliff High thing, we don't know where this is going, but I'm cautiously optimistic that this huge awakening that's happening now and everything we're seeing in the world, and the reason we're seeing the things we're seeing now is either they're trying to stop that or at the very least delay it for some reason. And I'm here to say it's not going to work. It might work temporarily on the short term, but long term, it's not going to work. This is not where we're going. There's too many Catherines and Jean-Claudes and people waking up now to this stuff, and we're taking the hard looks. Whereas before, I think you've probably experienced this too with your channel, and even in your family and maybe your neighbors, where you would speak about some of these things maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and people would go, no, 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 not true, not true, don't want to hear that, put their head back in the sand. Whereas now they're coming to you and like, Catherine, that thing you said 2 years ago, you were right, right? So people are starting to really gel together now. And I think the more and more that the mainstream media ignores reality, the more reality is going to ignore mainstream media. That's what's happening. And this is why they're cranking so hard on all these other platforms and preventing us from having our conversations with our followers. It's because we're having an impact. And so when it comes to, hey, should we continue doing these videos and these conversations? Absolutely, yes. It's working. It's frustrating, but it's working. And again, nobody's inciting violence. We're all looking for a peaceful, better earth and how to do that and to come together. But we need to support each other while we're in this transition, because every soul and every mind we recapture from that matrix has a cumulative effect. And we're getting to that tipping point, and I think we're very, very close. I'm excited about this, even though I'm frustrated. Some of those things happening. I'm excited about this, and at the same time, I look at all of this through the eyes of my kids, right? And so, like you as well. So this is where a lot of parents, again, are waking up to, maybe things they can do better on the parenthood side, maybe things that they never considered before. Now we're considering them. We're looking at things in a different perspective, and we're building these children up to be leaders to this new world. So we have a very, very important a job right now. And I think a lot of us are on that track now, and we're doing a good job again. But the risks are very high, and the stress is very high for us to be distracted and to drop into fear frequency, or to be detracted from our goals because of what's happening in the world. But we have to stay strong and resist. And I think that's the main key message I've been getting from most of the guests on my show is hold the line. We're almost there. Hold that line. Because the guys on the other side, they're holding the line, they're pushing forward. So if you don't hold it, they're going to go right through. And this is the critical part. And I think, again, this is why a lot of these people are having these fighting dreams right now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't seem to have had any sleep for months, I must say. I'm quite looking forward to the release of energy so I can catch up on some sleep. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because what has become abundantly clear, which we all knew deep down anyway, I think, but we just couldn't carry on the way we were going. We just couldn't. We needed a good reset.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, are we getting it. So actually, before we get on some of the other bits I was going to talk about, I'd love to know, you mentioned in there about holding the line and coping with the stress. And I think one of the things I found really useful with people like you and Janine and other people that I've connected with is having that support network, so that you can remind yourself of the tools and techniques we've all got in our toolbox to dispel some of this stress, and also to keep your frequency out of the fear and higher. So what have you been sort of employing over the last, sort of year, weeks, months, etc.? What are you finding that you'd like to share that really works with you?
In the last 2 months, I've started, how do I say this? I've increased maybe threefold the number of hours I spend taking care of my physical body. So I've always been, mind, body, and soul, martial arts, and all of that stuff. I do the spiritual stuff here on YouTube. But in the last couple of months, I kept getting the message, your physical body is behind in that triune. And so work at it more. So even though I was taking supplements, exercising, it apparently wasn't enough. At least that's what I was hearing. And so for the last 2 months, I've been hard at work, new training programs, much more fit, much more active, working on mobility, the diet as well. So I'm not talking about dieting. I'm talking about really high nutritional foods. I choose very carefully what enters my body now, more so than ever before. So I think that's probably a good advice for anybody anywhere, but right now, apparently even more so. And what I'm understanding from the guides, it has to do with frequency. So in order to go through all of these frequencies, your body has to be able to adapt, change, and maybe handle this extra load. And in order to do that, have to remove the toxins. How do you remove the toxins? You need to move your lymphatic system. You need to be active. You need to be eating well, putting less toxins in, right? So these are all the natural things. But again, we appear to be on this time clock. There's something really big in front of us. So everything you do today to increase your bodies, your physical body. Again, this is the vehicle for your soul, right? So it needs to be upgraded right now. And so that is the big, big, big thing I've been working on. And I can see, actually, I wasn't going to say this, but I'll say this. I'm about to launch a new YouTube channel, which is going to talk specifically about that, help people, show people what I'm doing, do interviews with people who are experts at this, whether it's their nutrition, their mobility, their martial arts training, whatever it is, but to bring people to really think about how important it is to take care of that vehicle, especially right now for the times that we're in now. And hopefully this is a channel that won't be political, that won't be on anybody's radar. It's just like cool fitness stuff and health and all that. So we'll try to keep that one under the radar. But yeah, I'm excited about that because I really think, just like you said, how COVID is a catalyst for change. I think we said that in our first interview. It's also a catalyst to understand and really pay attention to our bodies and to be masters of it. Because for the longest time, we've been taught that the nanny state would take care of that. They would tell you your regimen, they would tell you what to eat, and the FDA would be in your face and all of this stuff. Whereas, no. You need to understand what's best for you and you need to pay attention. So I went from maybe an hour a day to now 3 hours a day on the 24 hours, specifically looking at ways to improve the vehicle. So I'm not saying you guys have to do that, but if you're doing nothing right now, maybe put 10 minutes in. Maybe that's just reading stuff about your nutrition. Maybe that's just reading about how to detoxify your body. Maybe that's taking a juice cleanse for the first time in your life, right? Do something. It will help everything else in your life really seriously right now, maybe more than ever.
That's such good advice, and it's really interesting because I've got a series coming up now on exactly that, on how to help people really take back control of their health, on things like the nutrition, on the supplements, on the breathing, but both for the humans and for their animals as well. Because actually sometimes it's like most parents will sort of do things for their children first before themselves. Quite often I find that people will notice, because animals age quicker and have a shorter lifespan in general than humans, and so everything, all the bad decisions are reflected quicker, unfortunately, in our poor animals than they are in ourselves. And so sometimes they display problems earlier before the problems are exposed in the human, even though they've still got the same toxic things going into their bodies often. And so when people address their animals' health and see how powerfully you can turn that round with such simple changes, it often makes them look at their own lifestyle as well and employ those changes for themselves and their animals. I think that is fantastic you're doing that, absolutely fantastic, because we have chosen to be in a physical body at this time. And, it's respect for that, isn't it? And making sure that we give it the respect and the support that it needs.
Absolutely. And what you were saying there too, not just with the animals, again, I'll bring the kids into this equation. My dog's going, he's agreeing with us. He's like, oh, okay, again. My dog's so funny. Anyways, I have her in the room with me because there's nobody here. And if the mailman comes, she's going to go ballistic. So I'm going to try to control her if there's anybody coming through the door. But yeah, going back to the kids, they noticed. They're like, Daddy, you're you're doing more than before. What's going on? And so I explained to them, I'm just following guidance. I'm getting this message now that this is more crucial than ever before, because we do martial arts together. The kids are in martial arts too and all that. And they're seeing the regimen and the intention and attention that I'm putting to all of this now. And I explained to them why. And I kind of summed, they're younger. So I kind of summed it up this way. Something is in our field that is going to be maybe more stressful on the human body than ever before. Whether it's good or bad, I didn't make any attribution to it, but I need to be ready so that I'm here for you guys. Basically is what it boiled down to, right? And they're like 16 and 14. The oldest is 16 and the twins are 14. And they're kind of like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. Right? Kids, they get it right away, right? They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so then, maybe a couple of days later, Audrey, the oldest one, is like, I want to do a new workout program. Daddy, can you help me out in the gym? I'm like, sure. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? What are your goals and all that? So it got them excited too, to rethink maybe where they were at, because they're very healthy and extremely athletic already. But it just put them into gear that, wait, this is the vehicle with which we travel through all of this sludge right now. So your outcome is going to be better if your vehicle is up to par for the hill or the obstacle course that is being laid before us. So again, I encourage everyone, please do check it out. Encourage Catherine too, if she puts out these videos. We need to have these conversations, and we need to take that power away from officialdom. Now, it's not a talk against government or officialdom. It's just about self-mastery. Yeah. We have to listen to our bodies. We have to know what is good for us. We have to really pay attention when there's a pain in the body to understand where it's coming from and what the body is signaling to us. Most humans, as soon as they have a pain, oh, let me take an Advil, let me take a Tylenol. No. Why don't you just meditate? Put your hand where it hurts and ask your body. And then pay attention, right? We haven't been taught this. We've never been taught this. In the medical industry, it's like, oh, just take a pill, we'll see you next week. No, let's start listening to that body. It's much more intuitive, intelligent than we give it credit for. And once you start building that relationship, it'll do a lot more things for you. A lot more things for you. And that could bring us into many conversations. Yeah. You and I have talked about briefly, I think, Kundalini in the last show, but again, it's all about energy and how much energy you can hold in this vehicle.
It's just so important. And then that also affects what you're giving out to the world, because and how everything resonates with you as well. It's just absolutely fascinating. I mean, I've got horses. There's only one still that's rideable. The other two are retired. And I'm really strict. I don't get on my horse unless I'm physically in good shape, because they don't need to have to carry me if I'm lumping around on their back. It's just not fair on them. So it's a really good reminder, actually. And I've got to kick up the backside for that, because I'm quite good on the nutrition and on the health side of things and the spiritual. I do a lot of exercise in terms of walking and lifting and looking after and working outside a lot. But I could be doing a lot more. We can all do more. So that's a really, really good reminder. And you feel so great, don't you? You feel so great when you do just step it up a little bit.
Right. Maybe not on leg day. No. You don't feel so great after leg day. I'm on this grueling program now. And I'm saying leg day here too, because 3 years ago, I blew up my knee in an MMA contest, and I had like 7 different issues that I needed an operation for on my knee, on my left knee. And my doctor told me, well, Jean-Claude, we could do these 7 operations, but you'll be in rehab for a year or 2 anyways after this operation. So they asked me, do you want to be a professional MMA fighter, or you want to be just a healthy, regular dad? I'm like, I want to be a healthy, regular dad, right? I don't need to be an MMA fighter. So they're like, okay, because there's complications that could come with surgery. So I've been rebuilding a lot of those tissues in my knees, the tendons and all that stuff in the last while, and taking peptides and all of these things that I had to study to kind of understand that were against a lot of the mainstream narrative remedies for all of this, as opposed to surgery. So I'm back to a point now where I started being able to put stress on it and weight and all of that. So going through that process now, but it's really fascinating, because you just mentioned something, you feel great. Yeah, not only do you feel great, it reprograms your mind. Yeah. So let me give you an example. If you're used to benching 200 pounds or 300 pounds, whatever it is, right? You're like, okay, I can do this. If you really, really focus and you do your meditation and you have your intention and you're doing everything else I talked about, your food intake, your supplements, your sleep, and all of that stuff, suddenly those numbers are going up where in your mind you had a block before. This is it. My maximum is this number, whatever number that was. And then suddenly you've just passed it by 10%, 20%, 30%. And you're like, oh my God, if I keep going, where can I go? This body can do a lot more than I thought it could. And that, again, that programs you back into this reality as to what is possible and what's not possible. You've been told all your life, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, right? They keep putting you in these little boxes when we are much, much, much bigger than those boxes. And so when you first get out of that physical box of yours where you think that your personal limitations are X, whatever those are for you personally, and then you realize, wait, those weren't limitations, those were suggestions from somebody else, apparently, right? And you can reprogram that. It changes your whole mindset with everything else in your life.
Yeah, such a good point. And, when as you say, you've got the triangle of mind, body, spirit, and you've got to keep them all in balance. And it can be quite hard at times. You can get carried away in one area, and it's really good to have someone to point that out and bring that back on track.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is your treasure hunts. So we started touching on this last time and we didn't get very far. What are these treasure hunts? What are they? Why do you do them and what do you get out of them?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a huge adventurer. I love adventures. And so all my life, I've always been seeking adventures. I love to travel, love to see new places. I love to face the unknown, right? As scary as that is, sometimes that's always what's been driving me. And a couple of years ago, one of my best friends, his name is Joe, he's no longer, wait. Yeah, he was on YouTube, got deleted, now he's back on. So anyways, suffering the same issues that you and I are suffering. Anyways, his name is Joe, J-Snip4, Realist News, if you're looking for him on YouTube for his second backup channel. At any rate, he was guided as a kid, I guess from universe, since a very early age, to keep looking at these treasure hunting shows. So he was fascinated, as a toddler, moving up to the age he is now, probably around 40. And he's always been excited about that. And a couple of years ago, something happened where through his channel, somebody communicated to him, hey, if you're interested in all this, I've got this legend of this particular treasure in this particular location. And because you've been studying this all your life, he had been making comments here and there on his show of all the literatures, the codes, and the ways that our ancients used to hide treasures, and the markings and the different types of rocks and the animal structures and all of these codes basically to hide treasure. This is a long story. At any rate, so somebody tuned in to a specific location and he called me up. He said, Jean-Claude, I'm so excited. This thing is resonating to me. I have to go. I have to go check that out. And as soon as I looked at this, my spirit guy told me, you have to invite Jean-Claude. You can't do this without Jean-Claude, or whatever it was. And so he called me up. It was late at night. He says, I have to bring you on this thing. I'm like, of course, I got your back. And it was funny because as soon as he said that, I got that message in my ear. I'm going with him to have his back, but from the spiritual standpoint. I didn't know at the time why, because I'm like, it's just a treasure hunt. We're going to be digging or whatever it is, right? What's the spiritual stuff and all of this? And it turns out that this whole story, this is in New Mexico, and that's all I'll say. And New Mexico is the land of enchantment for a reason. There's a lot of crazy, crazy things. And we've had so many experiences there. We could get into them depending on how much time we have here. But essentially, I was invited on this trip. And then just as he knew I had to come, I also knew that Dave, one of our other friends, had to come. He was the heart component. So Dave is the highest heart person we've ever met. So anyways, if you've seen him on a show, you'll know who I'm talking about. And so we were this trio, and again, sacred geometry. So it took the three. And then we understood why the sacred geometry was involved. We got involved with the native tribes that were there. And at first they were kind of reticent to share with us any information. But then when they understood what we were doing, they started sharing more information and welcoming us into these ceremonies. And long story short, it's been a spiritual journey more than a treasure hunt. So although our brains originally, maybe the monkey brain side of things, were looking for the gold treasure, we understood that throughout this whole process, it's a huge spiritual treasure for all people involved, but not just the three, but humanity as well. There's something happening bubbling up, if you want to call it the four corners of America, the Hopi Indian. If you go into those prophecies, you'll kind of understand what I'm alluding here to. So we have some type of a role in the unfolding maybe of that prophecy. And so absolutely fascinating stuff. I can send you pictures next time. We could do a show on that. But the apparitions, the messaging, the you talk about woo. Because every time we go, and we spend months at a time there, when we go, weird things happen, and then we could say, okay, this is it, like this is crazy, and then the next trip is like 10 times crazier than the first one, and it just keeps going and going. And so anyways, now we're so excited to go back, but we've been on lockdown for almost a year and a half, and we've all grown spiritually since. And so we've understood, by talking to a lot of our psychic friends, mediums, and all of that, that every time we go as well and we increase our, call it spiritual quotient or brightness, we're also unlocking keys when we go back to these locations. And so we're excited now to go re-see this a year and a half later, as we are all doing our own interpersonal work to grow on that level, how that's also going to contribute to the mission there in some of these sacred spots in New Mexico. Fascinating stuff. We could do like a 10-hour show on all of this. Actually, I had a series, hold on. I had a series called 3 Dudes in the Desert, and we were laughing at each other, of course. But this was all deleted on my first channel. But we went through a lot of our experiences there, and people were like, that's absolutely crazy. And so everybody's like, can we go with you? So we put up this website, Spiritual Retreat Adventures. And we were going to do some hosting. So we would do a treasure hunting portion for us, just the 3, and then we would add another week and invite people and show them some of these sacred sites to go through the meditations, the ceremonies, and all that stuff. But all of this for now anyways is on hold until further notice.
Yeah, well, let's hope not too long. And you mentioned about the keys, which is another question I was going to ask about, because when we spoke last time, you were explaining about how, as we go through life, in all aspects of life, there's these keys, there's these nuggets of information that, whether depending on our level of awareness, we can either miss or see and act on. So one of my questions is, what keys have appeared to you over the last sort of year and a half?
So to me personally, what keys I've picked up?
Yeah, to you personally, because it's been a different thing. You haven't been going out and doing the traveling, but you've been speaking to so many different people, haven't you, on so many different subjects?
I would have to say I could probably pinpoint 1 or 2 unique keys. So let me see how I can frame those. But before I do that, some of the keys basically were upgraded. So put it that way. So if I used to have this one lock or this one key that could open 10 doors, that same key now for some reason has another tooth on it, and now I can open maybe 15 or 20 doors with it. So that extends to, oh, okay. So okay. So it has to do with recognizing genetics and other keys and other people also. This is a huge upgrade in the last year. And I think it's because of the lockdowns. Let's just stop it there. Because of that, we've had to extend our chi or energy further out than ever before to communicate. Whereas before, hey, let's go to dinner. I'm to dinner. Like, there's no problem. Now it's like, when I think of Catherine, I really have to, you're across the sea, but you get my point. I really have to focus on you, because I'm not allowed to go see at your house because we're not supposed to be more than 2 people, or whatever the rules are, right? So a lot of humans have been forced to extend their antenna, put it that way. And so for me, I've been paying attention to that, because in Kung Fu, we extend our ki. There's all these breathing exercises, techniques to extend our ki into these fighting situations, so that you can basically almost read before things happen, so that you can adjust faster to your response. So in meeting people, I would say this in the last year, this is one of my specific key that maybe is new to me, that I'm still trying to discover, is understanding those people and seeing those people who have keys for me even better than before. So whereas maybe 2-3 years ago, I knew I was on the track to learn this key, and I would ask people, who are you to me? Right? So I knew I had to ask the question, because that would trigger them, well, that's a stupid question. What do you mean? Right? Nobody knows how to answer that. And then they would say, well, who are you to me? I'm like, right. Now we're getting somewhere, right? And so now that's being done without the verbal. I think I'm getting to that level now, and I'm recognizing people in the chat. All of my shows are live, and so without recognizing the names or the people, some people use avatars. They don't use their real names when they're in the live chat, but I'm recognizing that they're part of either mission, whether that's the treasure hunting, Hopi prophecy, whatever that is, or this other mission that you and I are on now, which we're definitely on a mission doing the shows that we're doing now. And so I'm recognizing them and then holding a place for them in my toolkit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's another example, isn't it, of how you couldn't plan this. You couldn't plan these opportunities to come. You couldn't plan this awareness. But when you've got that opening question mind, you can pick up those little things and run with it and get the most out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the not planned thing, I think it was a good thing, because had it been planned, probably wouldn't work the way it's working now. Again, we were forced to adapt. And again, we mentioned this, a catalyst for change. We are resilient beings. Life on Earth is resilient, right? You put cement and eventually it'll crack and that blade of grass will go right through. Well, humans are the same way. We're resilient, but sometimes we need that pressure over top to find other ways of doing things that we need to do instinctively, that we know we're able to do, but we've been told otherwise. Oh no, that's impossible. Telepathy is impossible, or whatever. Now we're being forced to see other ways. And I think in a way, dare I say it, the last year or two has been like that for a lot of people. And now if the goal was to slow down whatever it is that's coming that might challenge their ability to control this planet, they've probably actually accelerated a lot of the people who are watching the show here into a whole other level of ability, which in turn will accelerate the ability in the people around them. Because even now, even with the rules that are in place now, and some of them are getting worse, like in your neck of the woods and in France, people are going like, yeah, whatever, and they're still going against all of that. So they're coming back together. And again, when we come together, we have that scalar ability of transferring that energy between each other, exchanging those keys and what we've learned. And so I think we're up for this huge acceleration of growth for humanity, especially those who are paying attention, doing the work, as you say.
Yeah, and you know, all these we've talked and mentioned already about how everyone has psychic abilities, but I really believe that these sort of untapped areas that have been hidden from us for so long are really going to come into the fore very, very quickly, actually, now, because we are being forced to communicate in new ways. And at the moment, we're still using a lot of the technology for that, but there's a lot's going on even sort of now. You know, there's things worth saying and things that we're feeling and communicating without words, etc., particularly with all the code words and everything that have been. But you know, I think it is pushing us to re-explore these areas that we didn't know. We've already talked about the self-healing. One of the joys for me, having been a natural health practitioner for years, I'm a biologist as well, but in natural health has been my passion for years. And now to see all these people that have been suppressed for so long have got a whole new audience and appreciation. And it's backfiring on people. It really is backfiring. You know, these natural remedies are really coming to the fore now.
Yeah, and you were just saying something and it was eluding me for a second here. Oh, shoot. I just had a point. Where did it go? Something to do about remedies. I'll come back to it. It's an important part. Oh, what is it?
It will come as soon as we start talking about
about something else. Yeah.
So one of the other things you've spoken about, because it will come, and if it comes, just go back to it, is you spoke last time about really having the ability to slow down and take it all in. It was when we were talking about your scuba diving and things, but I think that's a really important point for people. Can you elaborate on that, about how important it is not to rush through life and really take in everything that's in your surroundings and energy field?
Oh, it goes exactly with what we're talking about now in terms of the keys. Most people go through life in this hectic, um, managed directional azimuth or direction, and it's not by them, it's by whatever the matrix wants you. So have a job by the time you're 20, get married by the time so and so, have the picket fence, all of this stuff, right? So most people, until they wake up to realize, wait a second, who's driving my ship, who right, who's in charge, why isn't it not me? And so for a lot of people, they never even ask that question, what's going on with that? And so once you realize that you can take the steering wheel, put your foot on the gas or put your foot on your brake in terms of your own personal development and growth, and what it is you feel that it is necessary for your soul to accomplish on this particular mission that you're on now, suddenly everything changes. You're not being bumped in like left, right, center, through the crowd, and you're supposed to do this to comply and basically match how the matrix wants you to be, right? And so the trick is to slow down at first.
Oh, we've frozen. Let's see if that comes back. I think it's Jean-Claude's frozen for me. Let's see if I've frozen for him. Ooh.
All right, keep going.
We've got Jean-Claude back. You've got a huge power storm there, haven't you? A huge storm going on, which cut your electrics for a bit.
It's dark as night here and it's midday, so it's like the clouds are black, and yeah, electrical storms and thunder. So hopefully we could quickly finish the show before we have more interruptions, because I just got a message from Sarah who says in Ottawa it's absolutely worse right now and the storm is coming this way. So I'm like, it's already here.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, so we'll wrap it up, because I could just carry on with all night. It's been fantastic. So to finish it off then, what's your message for people to get them through the next couple of weeks? What are your words of wisdom?
I didn't get it to the slow down part, but we can do another show on that anytime. Invite me back, Catherine. I love having these chats with you, and we'll get into the scuba diving pictures and how that helps slow down and look at the macro as opposed to the micro level. But maybe that's also something we could say right now. Slow down, pay attention to what's around you, really analyze what you see, what you hear, what you think you're being told or shown, and really go within and use that discernment, I guess, is number one. Because if you're being bombarded by all these sources and accepting at face value what you're being told and shown, you might be being led the wrong way here. There's a lot of weird things happening right now. That's number one. And number two, I have to go back to the body. Something's happening to us right now, and I think increasing the ability of your body to hold this charge as we're going through this process will absolutely enable you to maybe make it easier. Let me put it this way, for yourself and maybe for your family as well, because if you're in a better shape, you'll be able to help the people around you as well.
That's such good advice. It is such good advice. And I'm so excited for your new channel on that. So let us know as soon as it's available. And yeah, the storm is upon us, literally, with you.
Yes, I don't know. My phone's blowing right now. I think my parents need help, but they're next door too.
I will let you go.
There's something else going on.
Yeah, I'll let you go. You go and sort your family out. Thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this chat. It's just been fantastic. Let's do it again.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you for letting me give that little update for the audience as well at the beginning. Please, again, here, bear with me as I work through all of these details, and I promise I will fulfill on all of you who are members of that platform. We'll find a way to give you back the keys to what belongs to you guys here. So we'll work on that very shortly. And also, I want to say, anytime, Catherine, let's do this again. I want to go back to this conversation. I think there's more there, and maybe let's try for next week as opposed to in 2 or 3 weeks. I think time is very critical right now. And I'm absolutely.
Thank you so much. Lots
Thank
of
you,
love.
Catherine.
Take care.
Love you too. Have a great day. Bye.